If you had a stroke or know someone who has experienced this, then I don't have to tell you how terrifying this experience can be. And when your body starts to act and react in ways that goes beyond your control, it raises a big question. What happened? What caused it? And if you had a healthy lifestyle, then you might have even more questions. Now, in today's talk, we discuss deep emotional psychosomatic root causes behind stroke. Hi, my name is Evette Rose, author and founder of Metaphysical Anatomy, which is a book that guides you to understand hidden messages in the emotional body. And welcome to today's topic, which is understanding and uncovering hidden emotional stress that contributes to a stroke. Now, I would also highly recommend that you also listen to my talks about high blood pressure and high cholesterol and diabetes as well, because these conditions can also actually make you more vulnerable to experience a stroke. And it is also important to observe the hidden emotional stress behind these ailments as well, because a stroke can actually sometimes be a secondary expression of the initial mentioned ailments. So let's briefly define a stroke. Right, this is when there's a bleeding in the brain or a loss of blood flow in the brain. And this can also be triggered when fatty tissues and arteries, for example, starts to detach themselves and move toward the brain. Now, first and foremost, when someone suffers from a stroke, it is a clear indication that a stressful emotional situation in their life or their present life from the past, doesn't matter, has now taken a toll on them. Even if it's from the past, if there's a memory that continuously to bug you in the subconscious mind, and the stress of that becomes so heightened because your environment continuously subconsciously triggers the memories in the emotional body, then you can have a physical reaction. Now, a stroke in this place, right? A stroke in this place can take place when a person is going through very stressful situations that's causing them to feel emotionally out of control and also emotionally unresourceful, meaning that they don't know how to act and react in order to gain control again over their circumstances. Now, let's set that observation aside just for a minute, right? So what is interesting here is that a person can actually also suffer from a stroke during a time when things are actually going really well. Why would that be? Right? When the storm is now finally over. Now, that is what I would call a delayed response to trauma and with stress. Now, in this case, the person had a stroke, right? They had a strong numbing dissociative state, especially during the past stressful events, which is a coping mechanism. Now, this coping mechanism temporarily masks the severity of what they experienced emotionally, physically, and mentally. Now, once the traumatic event is over, right? Note I say traumatic event, which can be a one-off event. However, take note, long-term stressful small events can actually also become traumatic to your mind and your emotional body. Now, coming back to what I said earlier, right, about when a traumatic event is over, the body is now going into what it's called state of shock. It's almost like when you sit in cold water for too long, right? The initial shock of it is like, it's really cold, right? But now also meaning that you overcome the cold at some point and your body starts to numb itself. And you can actually start to feel quite comfortable because your body adjusts. Now, it's easier then to stay longer in the water, but your body is fully aware of the extreme environment. However, your mind is tricked into thinking that you are okay because of the numbness and that the body tries to adjust. Remember, we are designed to adapt, but also to a certain extent. But then when you get out of the water, the body can actually go into a state of shock if you don't heat up the body correctly afterwards. So you see, the mind and the emotional body is the same during the traumatic times, especially if your coping mechanism is to dissociate and also emotionally numb yourself. Now, you think, for example, that you're doing fine during the stressful events. However, your emotional body and your subconscious mind is experiencing everything to its fullest extent. Now, once the stress is over and your numbing mechanism starts to calm down, you can then feel the consequences of the emotional stress and strain that you experience. So now let's move over to the emotional body and hidden messages and stress that has been held there, and also the meaning behind it. Because when you look at the ailment, and the causes of it, then it can almost tell you exactly what is emotionally going on in that person's life. And the most amazing part is that in most cases, these emotional messages stored in specific parts of the body is universal, because our blueprint is the same. So a stroke now takes place in the brain, and that is the control center of the body, which also now in this case will translate to our emotional ability to be and feel in control of our life, our environment, and our goals, and so forth. Now, when you look at bleeding, that aspect now relates to our ability to communicate ourselves and also how easy it is, right? How to easily communicate. And the fatty tissue inside the artery walls detaching could translate to a new form of protection that is needed, right? Also the person needing protection from how people are communicating to them and feeling out of control and unable to verbally defend themselves. Now the mitochondria cells also in this case can be damaged, right? So especially in the stroke survivor. And there are proteins that are actually made to heal and repair the mitochondria. However, these cells were not repaired. And emotionally and psychosomatically, the mitochondria represents your life force and joy, which also now has been greatly impacted and almost destroyed by your circumstances or by someone in your life who you've given power to over you, right? So now proteins in this case represent love. It represents the presence of love in your life. So if you suffered a stroke, then let's jump straight into the emotional challenges. Now, we all want love, right? And I know that you can relate to that. Now, in this case, for example, you want to be loved, but at the same time, you also have an unconscious fear of receiving love because of negative associations and even traumatic situations as a result that you had with love, right? Especially during the times when you needed love and it was met in negative ways. Now, you also made a negative association with love. This is very important because receiving love may have caused you to feel out of control. Remember what I said earlier, if you're now starting to put the pieces slowly together, right? It can make you have left you feeling out of control, right? Even just recently, right? In a severe way. Now, also be mindful that you don't put yourself down, right? Don't put your experiences down from the past and assume, right, that what you felt or experienced might not have been traumatic for an average person, right? Because that is where you are wrong. And also probably one of why many reasons that you try to downplay your reactions and your experiences. Now, also always remember that we all have different thresholds in life for different circumstances. And if, for example, something was traumatic to you, then that is exactly what it was, regardless of what someone else's view is of that, right? So which now brings me to your childhood, right? This, for example, could have potentially caused you to feel a lot of numbness in your life to certain stress factors, only to reach now a boiling point in your adult life. Now, one or both of your parents in this case also could have displayed a lot of out of control type behaviors when all that you wanted was attention. And now, subconsciously, you are aligning yourself with people and circumstances who will make you feel exactly the same way, reinforcing the old childhood trauma. Now, you may also have, for example, have a fear of love and also a fear of losing control in your life because maybe, just maybe you saw one or both of your parents losing control. And now this has caused many self-sabotaging patterns, self-doubt, and also caused a lot of emotional wounds in your self-esteem. Now this fear also, for example, reflected itself throughout your relationships and also your interactions with people. And this cycle now has come full circle. And your emotions now have become intense and overwhelming over time. And it is almost literally paralyzing you because now you are or you were in circumstances that left you feeling helpless and powerless to verbally defend yourself. And also your divinity has been attacked. It almost feels like it's been attacked, right? Under attack by someone, for example, who was supposed or at least supposed to protect you or defend you. Now, this means that deep down, love has a very dark side. And you know how much it can hurt you if you allow yourself to become vulnerable, right? So now, because of this vulnerability, you've internalized a lot of anger and rigidity as well, because that could also now have become your source of strength. Right, so you've now invested also a great deal of energy in protecting yourself from toxic and draining love that might potentially harm or expose a weakened, wounded part of you. Now, this could have actually left you feeling mentally and emotionally challenged whenever you communicated the need for more control, for love and for safety and understanding or affection, right? Especially now in the way in which you expressed your emotional needs were not always understood. Now, this made you feel unloved, unfulfilled, ignored, and perhaps even humiliated by the person to whom you expressed this to. So, of course, now this leaves you feeling a deep need for love and support and acceptance. So now you took on other people's burdens as well, and also responsibilities as a form, as a form of distraction from your reality. Right? So by keeping yourself busy, you help fill a wounded void in your life. What could also be the case is that you've reached a point where you do not have as many responsibilities, and you took on one task that was stressful, and it was just enough for your emotional body to reach its threshold, right? For suppressing this long-standing negative, strong emotions. Now you are terrified that you will not be loved and admired or accepted anymore, now that your capacity to do what you are good at, which has now been challenged. And what you were good at was taking responsibility, taking charge, taking control, and saving people, everyone except yourself. Now, your acceptance and your self-worth were also based on how many burdens and responsibilities you had. I want to touch on this just one more time because this is a very, very important psychosomatic part of strokes. Because the people now in this case, right, the people here who used to need you may be now unavailable. So you are searching to replace the acceptance and the approval that you got from them. And so when this pattern changes, so will your lifestyle and also your relationship with yourself, because you are now spiritually and emotionally and physically exhausted. You have felt very intense emotions for a very long period of time, and yet you felt too awkward to communicate these emotions. And your sadness and your pain now is expressed through anger, through resentment and rage, which only causes now more confusion, as the origin of the anger is not expressed. So where to from here? Now, firstly, I would highly recommend my other videos as well, the root causes of anger and how to deal with it. Because here we are looking now at boundary failures over and over again. So practice boundaries, right? And when you say no, right, you need to feel the feeling of the need to say no. Feel the boundary and then express it. Because you don't need anger to say no anymore. Right? I can't stress enough how important it is to also meditate. It is crucial in this case to help keep your mind and your body calm, especially first thing in the morning, because that sets the platform and the foundation for how your whole day is going to be and the natural state that you can revert back to. When you get stressed, it's there. Once you've meditated, the body remembers the foundation of how you started. So it's easier to revert back to that. It's like when you start a day in a state of distress, that's kind of like the tone for the day. I'm sure you can relate to that. And also take out more time for yourself and do what you love, right? And also find your sense of purpose, right? Through looking after yourself first. You now need to be your purpose, because when you make yourself your purpose, that is when a new purpose will also start to find you. And I would also highly recommend my online healing session It's a session where you will be guided through steps where you can start to look at emotional blocks and challenges and stress that you feel like you just can't quite shake off and you don't understand even also why they still are there. So I would highly recommend in that case for the advertisement-free version, guidedhealingsession.com. And guys, thank you so much. That's a wrap for today. And thank you for joining me. And until next time, be the light that you are. Hi guys, thank you for joining me. And remember to grab your copy of Metaphysical Anatomy on Amazon, 679 medical ailments. And I also wrote about the psychosomatic root causes of that. And I'm spoiling you because I even added key points for you to start looking at important questions that you can ask yourself to start improving your quality of life. And also remember to catch me on Instagram, Evette Rose, 1 with the digit 1, and Metaphysical Anatomy on our Facebook fan page. Bye guys.